Defining GDP and GNP. Gross domestic product, GDP, and gross national product, GNP, are both measures of a country's economic performance, but they differ in terms of the scope of economic activity they measure. GDP focuses on the total value of goods and services produced within a country's borders, while GNP includes the total value produced by a country's residents, both domestically and internationally. GDP, total economic output within a country. Gross domestic product, GDP, measures the total market value of all goods and services produced within a country's borders over a specific time period, regardless of who owns the production assets. It is a key indicator of a country's economic health, reflecting domestic production and consumption. GNP, total economic output by a country's residents. Gross national product, GNP, expands on GDP by including the total economic output produced by a country's residents, whether they are located within the country or abroad. GNP accounts for income earned by citizens and businesses outside of their home country while subtracting income earned by foreign nationals within the country. Focus on domestic versus national economic activity. The primary difference between GDP and GNP lies in their focus. GDP measures only the domestic production within a country, emphasizing the economic activity occurring inside its borders. In contrast, GNP measures national production, including income from overseas activities of the country's residents. GDP and GNP in the context of globalization. Globalization has made the distinction between GDP and GNP more significant, as countries' residents are increasingly involved in economic activities abroad. For example, a country with many multinational corporations or expatriates working overseas may have a higher GNP than GDP due to the income generated abroad. GDP's role in measuring domestic economic health. GDP is often used as a primary indicator of a country's overall economic health. It reflects the level of domestic production, consumer spending, investment, and government expenditure. A growing GDP typically signals a healthy, expanding economy, while a shrinking GDP may indicate a recession or economic slowdown. GNP's role in measuring national economic health. GNP is more comprehensive in measuring a country's economic performance because it accounts for the income produced by its residents worldwide. GNP is especially important for countries with significant investments abroad, as it provides a broader picture of their total economic output, including earnings from foreign markets. Income from abroad. How GDP and GNP differ. GDP does not include income generated by residents working or investing abroad, nor does it factor in foreign-owned businesses within the country. GNP, however, includes the income of citizens and businesses outside the country and subtracts the income earned by foreign nationals within the country, giving a fuller picture of national income. Practical example of GDP versus GNP. For example, consider a U.S. company with a factory in Mexico. The value of goods produced in Mexico would contribute to Mexico's GDP but not to the U.S. GDP. However, the income generated by that factory would contribute to the U.S. GNP, as it is owned by a U.S. company. Similarly, if a U.S. citizen earns income from investments abroad, it would count toward U.S. GNP, not GDP. Implications for policy and economic strategy. Policymakers and economists use GDP and GNP to assess different aspects of a country's economy. While GDP helps in analyzing the health of a country's economy within its borders, GNP gives insight into the global reach and economic activities of its residents. Both indicators can guide decisions on trade policies, investment strategies, and international relations. Limitations of GDP and GNP as economic indicators. Although GDP and GNP are useful in measuring economic activity, they have limitations. Neither measure accounts for income inequality, environmental sustainability, or the distribution of wealth within a country. Additionally, GNP may overstate a country's economic health if it heavily depends on foreign income, while GDP may not reflect the economic well-being of citizens working abroad.